Oh, goody, goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh, my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Kyneton, joined by my fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Woolscroft.
Not one, but two icons across the table from us right
I
now.
think that's the apt description for that. We are
Embarrassment of riches.
Yes, we're here at the Eerie Horror Fest, and joined with us today for our collection of interviews is Nancy Loomis and Eileen Dietz. You might know them from a couple movies, like, you know, Halloween and The Exorcist. Welcome to the podcast, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
Am I on?
Yep, you're on. You're
You're good. So, you know, think back some 40-odd years ago, you know, it's like, it's a movie about a guy who's killing babysitters. Hopefully, you know, some people will see it, and doing makeup work for a movie that's going to be transgressive towards the Catholic Church. Boy, hope that works out. Jump ahead 40 years later, these are on the Mount Rushmore of horror movies.
50.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. 40-odd,
50th
50-odd, yeah.
anniversary.
Yeah, just, you know, did you ever think that these small movies that you were making would just have such a lasting impact all these years later?
No. Is the short answer.
No.
But we liked making Halloween. We thought it was a good movie. We had a lot of fun making it. And we hoped it would do well. But it started out pretty slow when it was released. You know, it took a while for it to really gain some word of mouth, because we didn't have the internet in those days. So it was a little bit slower of a pace as it unrolled. But when it started to really pick up and take off, we were very excited.
Because it was the release wasn't nationwide, right? It was more of a territorial release. It would go to a couple markets, and then they would call their cousin
Right.
Vinny and say, "Hey, when this comes to your town, you gotta check it out." Kind of situation, all that.
Who knows? Maybe they were writing letters to each other.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, back then, yeah.
it seems like so long ago.
How did you come across, you know, doing basically a makeup test for The Exorcist and getting involved in that? Because you were fairly successful at this point. You were commercial work, and then you were in film and television. So how did The Exorcist get on your radar?
Well, first let me answer the other question, that when we shot The Exorcist, again, nobody knew what was going to happen with it, and it wasn't a fun shoot, but that's beside the point. Yeah. I loved it. I loved being there. And nobody knew what was going to happen with it, but from the day it opened, it was a major hit. And they created it a lot. They had an incredible PR system going on at the time. Nobody was allowed to come visit the set. It was closed to everybody. Nobody was allowed to take anything from the set. I have a couple pictures. I don't know how I got them, but even Dick Smith, the makeup artist, couldn't take anything. And they created those lines. It was like the first time that they wouldn't let anybody in while the film was showing. So the lines became longer and longer while they waited to get in. And believe it or not, they kind of created people throwing up in the aisles and fainting in the aisles. And then everybody
Are you saying
did.
those were plants?
Yeah.
No, I didn't say that. I said,
I went to see The Exorcist the day it opened in Los Angeles.
oh my God, you did?
Yeah.
And you stood in
it
line?
was a phenomenon. It was an event, for sure.
Yeah.
We unfortunately made the mistake of taking my friend's 12-year-old sister to see it, and that was
That's terrifying.
really
That's-
bad. She was terrified.
And were you terrified?
No, but I was excited. I was scared, but you know, I wasn't 12 years old, but I thought this is really a fabulous film.
Yeah, and that film, we can go into that later, but the editing so much made that film. And just like French Connection for Freakin'.
Absolutely.
The editing is just absolutely brilliant. And the DP, Owen Rosman, who just passed, was absolutely wonderful. But in answer to the question you asked me, the makeup test came much, much, much later. I was doing a play in New York City at a 99-seat theater, and I'm always get amused because people, the powers that be, they say, you have to be paid. Why do you want to do theater for free? I mean, what are you doing? I even heard, the groundkeepers get paid. So, however, I did this play. It was a Joyce Carol Oates play, if you know Joyce Carol Oates. And she only writes about wrestlers, but she wrote a prologue to one of her books. It was called Ontological Proof of My Existence, which means there is no existence. Anyway, 2 agents came to see the show. And at that time in New York, you didn't have to sign exclusively with people. It was wide open. So they called me the next day, and they said, do you want to audition for this horror film? They're looking for someone small and strong that could act, which meant that because the demon possessed Reagan, and I was originally only hired for the masturbation scene.
Right, you did double duty on the film.
But I never was a double. Because doubles are extras, and unfortunately, people call me a stunt double, and I can't even imagine being a stunt double. Are you kidding? Break this face? But even Life magazine just came out with a story about The Exorcist, and the last page has a face of Pazuzu on it, and they call me a stunt double.
No.
But they use my name, and I'm in like 3 other pages, which they wouldn't recognize me at all. But that's what happened, and then I did 2 auditions for the casting director that were improvisations. They gave me the book, told me to take it home and read it. That's Bill Blatty's book about The Exorcist, which everybody should read. It's amazing, and it's different than the film. Yeah. The ending is different. So I did, and I didn't know how to play a demon, really. So I went to the library, and I got pictures of wild animals. And I came home and pulled my shades down, lit some candles, and like animal. So I came back and did that. She asked me to blah, blah, blah. And she said, lose some weight, which I was really skinny anyway. So I wrapped myself in plastic.
Hollywood in the 70s, right? Yeah.
But I wrapped myself in plastic and rode my bike through Central Park because they used to have magazines that you could order these sweatsuits from. Maybe they still do. Then I met Billy Freakin and Linda Blair and Dick Smith. And we went up to Dick Smith's studio, which was amazing. He had a bus of Marlon Brando and Dustin Hoffman. Dick loved to talk. So he told all these stories while you're sitting under a plastic mask, which is what they use so they can make prosthetics for you. And after that, I did a screen test. And they brought out a crucifix that was, we have no pictures, but it was a foot long. And I played both parts. Yeah. And finally, they called and said I had the part.
Very cool. Now, you said it was kind of a little bit of a troublesome set there, but correct me if I'm wrong, Halloween was more of a relaxed production. And you guys, the 3 of you, were just so organic. Obviously people want to give credit to John, but I think a lot of that goes to Deborah Hill and her working with you. But how much of that was just the natural chemistry that you had with Jamie and PJ?
Well, I think it was a combination of the situation, what the director wanted, what the writer, Deborah Hill, as writer and producer, was able to, bring it, and the 3 of us who, it was just a happy meeting of all 3, and we knew that in the film we were friends, and we wanted to create that, and so nobody was trying to do anything counter to that.
Yeah.
It comes off very natural.
And Deborah wrote the lines, and she wrote really good dialogue for us, and then we added to it, and as we went along, so it just sort of unfolded in a way that felt very natural and easygoing, and the set atmosphere was easygoing. It was very different than. It was a low-budget independent feature film, as opposed to The Exorcist. Yeah. And I mean, just the description of what you went through before you even got the part, in terms of the mask of all of that. I mean, all Tommy Lee Wallace did was to go down to the Hollywood mask shop and get a mask of William Shatner and
Right. Yeah.
alter it slightly.
But you weren't playing the monster.
No, I wasn't. But that was it. That was. I mean, he was a monster, but he was also not a monster. He was sort of.
You had a mask.
But he had a mask,
Yeah.
right? And nobody went to a whole hell of a lot of trouble, the way you just described.
When did Halloween come out?
78.
78.
Oh, after the Exorcist.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4
Yeah.
years
Can
after.
I ask, how did you get the part?
5 years.
'Cause I was friends with John. I had
John.
made another movie,
Which John?
John
Carpenter.
Carpenter.
Oh, of course, duh.
I had
like
worked.
John who?
I worked on Assault on Precinct 13, which is the feature film he had made before Halloween,
You've done acting and wardrobe for that, I remember.
and set dressing.
Yeah.
You know, that was an even lower budget than Halloween. That was like under $100,000. We made that movie, and so everybody did multiple jobs on it, and I loved that aspect of it. The one before it.
Yeah.
On Halloween, they said, "No, Nancy, it's okay. You don't have to, you don't have to be part of the set crew." Although I wanted to be, because I really liked working behind the camera, even more than working in front of the camera.
What was your reaction? You mentioned about getting the mask from the Hollywood mask shop. What was your reaction the first time you saw that Michael Myers mask that had been transformed from the Shatner mask, and you're in that scene?
Well, there were some choices involved, and I can't remember what the other choices were now. But when that mask, when that, I think it was Tommy who was modeling the mask, and when he put that mask on, it was clear that was the right feel. It was. It didn't look like William Shatner, but it didn't look like a monster, but it didn't look real. It looked ghostly and just weird enough, and it was also funny. We thought it was really funny that it was a William Shatner mask with a slight adjustment to it. So it just felt right, and everybody knew it.
So what's interesting is, you had a long run with John Carpenter, but I think it was around after Halloween 3, you stepped away from, you did a Twilight Zone, some TV stuff, but you had mostly stepped away from acting to kind of teach it and to do other art.
No, I stepped away because I had 2 children to raise.
Okay.
That'll do it.
I became a mother.
That'll do it.
I became a mother, and I did that for about 10 years. And during that time, I got very interested in making sculpture and teaching, so that when I was no longer working so hard as a mom, I really, my artistic curiosity was there, and that's where I went.
Right.
And then I couldn't support myself as a sculptor, so I started teaching. And now that's what I do, and I really love teaching.
What do you teach?
I teach theater courses at Cal Poly Pomona.
But how to, or how to build? I'm
No,
sorry,
I-
I'm taking.
No, you're great.
I
love
teach
it.
It's a round table,
academic.
it's fine. Yeah. Keep going.
I teach text analysis, and I teach theater history courses, and I teach introduction to theater. And I teach a really fabulous course called Through Artists' Eyes, which is about all these sort of external things that artists need to think about as they pursue their professional path.
How fabulous.
It is really fun.
Now, Elaine, you've worked steadily in the business now since the time you were a kid up until today. I know after The Exorcist, you did a lot of television, Planet of the Apes TV series. I think Happy Days. I think you were season 4, episode 13. You were Rebecca.
That's one of their favorite episodes. By
Yeah,
the way.
it's a good one.
I had a neighbor who used to check it out in TV Guide whenever it was on.
And but you did like a lot of like different roles in different shows, but then you got landed a soap opera that you were able to do for many years. Can you speak to what it's like to jump around character to character, but then have that comfort of being able to play the same character in a soap opera for many years and letting that character evolve?
Well, I loved playing Sarah in General Hospital. It was one of my favorite jobs ever because she was in a mental institution. And she decided she wasn't going to grow up because her friend drowned in an accident. And my character felt it was her fault. So she decided if she didn't grow up, she didn't have to be responsible for her death. Right. So I carried a doll around the whole time I was on the show. And it's a good thing there was no IMDb because they never would have cast me for that because she was like 17 and I was older than that. And I just loved it. And a lot of people from mental said, were you really in a mental institution? You played that part so well. And I said, no, I just loved it. And she was different than any other soap opera character. In fact, I went into the makeup room and I said, I don't want soap opera makeup. I just want some foundation and some mascara. And that's it. She's in a mental hospital. Right. So fans were able to relate to me. And because the show at that time was the most popular soap opera ever, it was like being on a nighttime show. And people would stop me. And you couldn't walk any place because you were like, I loved it. It was like the answer to all my fantasies. But I also loved it because I did a lot of shows, but you didn't get paid for them at that time. And you didn't sell anything. So I did shows to support mental health and stuff like that because it was just so well known. And the other shows, going from character to character, we're actresses, we're chameleons, so you just leave one behind. Like, I played a chimp on Planet of the Apes, it's kind of like, I fell in love with Roddy McDowell, and that was the first show I did in California. And all the parts are so different that you just start from the very beginning, and I have great respect for writers. You can't make a film without a script. You can't make a good film without a script. So you just do what the writer asks you to do, basically. And we'll come back to that, but that's why they call it the curse of the Exorcist, all the sequels and stuff like that. Because they don't have script. Even the new one that's coming out.
Oh, well, it already just came out, and it's already... I've seen reviews of it that have just been, it's god awful.
Well, it's the same thing, but not done so well. It's two girls that get possessed.
I made the argument on social media as someone who posted about it, and I said, listen, this is a movie no one really asked for. I don't know anyone who's just said, you know what I really want is another Exorcist movie. And I think there's a trend now, and it happened with Halloween. Right, where someone I follow mentioned it called the curse of the requel, where it's
Halloween,
a reboot sequel, and it's like, at what point do we say, hey, what happened to like those original ideas that birthed those movies to begin with? Because the ones that really stick are the ones that are original, that are from writers that have ideas that construct stories about that, and I'd hope that because of the WGA strike that just got resolved, that maybe there's some idea that maybe we should pay homage to those writers more than we did in the past.
What is it like as somebody to get noticed for your roles? You mentioned, once you were on General Hospital and probably other things that like, you go to the mall or down the street and you get recognized. And what was it like, people quoting Annie at you? Like, when did you kind of notice that, oh, this Halloween thing it's hard to go out now?
Well, it's not really very hard for me to go out. I'm pretty much incognito. But I think I forgot all about Halloween until the late 90s, I think, when horror conventions came up on the landscape. And that was thanks to the internet and everybody's ability to hook up with everybody else and share their enthusiasm for horror movies and develop this whole cosplay idea, which is so popular now, and it was a way. These conventions are a way for fans to gather and celebrate what they were into, right? And so one day I got a call. I think it was from Adrienne Barbeau. She said, Nancy, do you know these things are going on? You might be interested in this. It's kind of lucrative and it's kind of fun. And so that's how I got involved in it.
And with Chris.
And with Chris, right?
We had the same manager.
Oh yeah.
So,
cool.
And that was in the early 2000s, maybe. And I was shocked. I truly was astounded because I'm not a horror movie fan. This is like full disclosure here. I don't like being scared. I've never seen Rob Zombie's movie. The only horror movie I've ever seen are the ones that I was in.
Or The Exorcist.
Well, The Exorcist, but that was really before this whole genre arose,
For sure,
right?
yeah.
I was gonna say if you're not a horror fan, you pick The Exorcist. That's a good one to pick.
A lot of people who are in horror movies are not usually big horror fans.
Yeah, no. Well, yeah, I know. I'm not the only one. Let's put it that way. But so I just didn't know. I just didn't know. I was into other things, and I certainly wasn't letting my kids watch horror movies. So I was really shocked, and it took me a while to really appreciate the enthusiasm for this genre, and to really appreciate what the fans were bringing, not only to the business, the genre of perpetuating the amazing field that it is now, but also just I think, as PJ pointed out recently, Halloween as a holiday is like the biggest thing going.
It's
of the year.
rivals Christmas now. I think I was reading somewhere that
Christmas? I knew what you said, but Christmas?
no,
Almost
but
on
yeah,
the financial end of things.
from the financial side, people
Yeah.
spend more now on almost as much on Halloween as they do on, say, Christmas.
Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know
and
that.
as much time.
Yes.
I mean, in my neighborhood, there's already plenty of people out there whose lawns are covered with Halloween.
And they start earlier and earlier every year.
Exactly.
Like you get middle of
So-
September.
Have you ever seen Chris's lawn?
No.
Chris Rowe, our manager, his older son puts together, and that's up already. This amazing display of
Yeah. So it's this synergistic phenomenon that I'm still kind of amazed by it. But
Well, do people recognize you from the conventions?
no, they don't really. It's very rare that somebody will recognize me. I'm just invisible in my neighborhood. I'm just an old white lady walking down the street.
Well, it's hard to recognize Pazuzu.
That's right. Yeah, you could have just hid forever if you wanted.
Yeah. But more and more, we went to the Hollywood Bowl, I think, to see John Williams, and somebody came out and said, "Hey, Eileen, Pazuzu," and I thought I was totally surprised, and I said, "Can you do that again in front of my manager?" Can I take a picture with you? Yeah, in front of Chris.
Now, when you go to conventions, how much do you get for stuff from Halloween 3? Because before we even started recording here, it was kind of the forgotten stepchild of this franchise, but I think it's kind of gained its own kind of notoriety over time. With Pittsburgh's own Tom Atkins, in there. But
We might have interviewed him at one time.
so
No, it is a very popular film. It has really risen in respect, and it's pretty much in its own sort of niche. And as I said to you earlier, Tommy Lee Wallace has written a book now about the whole experience, and the subtitle of the book is "The Little Sequel That Wasn't."
I didn't know that. Dee wrote it with who?
Tommy Lee wrote it. I don't know if he wrote it with Deborah or John, I can't remember, or someone else, but he wrote it and directed it, and I don't know, probably did some other things on it too. But anyway, it doesn't have Michael Myers in it. It was, I think the original idea for Halloween was that every movie that came after it would be a separate movie.
Yeah.
It would just have a Halloween theme to it. So Halloween 3, I think it's called Season of the Witch.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it was made too late. It was made after Halloween 2, which was a sequel to the original Halloween. And by that time, the fans had been
They had been locked and
curated
loaded on
to
Michael
the point
Myers.
where the character of Michael Myers was in demand, and so fans went to Halloween 3 thinking that they were going to get a film with Michael Myers, and when he wasn't there, they were disappointed, and so they really couldn't look past that and see what was there instead.
Technically, he's there.
He's on a little TV
one
screen.
scene on a TV screen.
Okay.
But
I get what
he
you're
pokes
saying.
his head in there in one scene.
In the TV,
in this
yeah.
universe, the Halloween's a movie.
Yes.
So, like, Tom Atkins is at a bar, his character's at a bar, and they say, coming tonight at 8, the horror Halloween classic, Halloween on Channel 4.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So it took all this time, 40 years, for it to come into its own. But I mean, I go to these conventions, and most of what I'm signing, half of what I'm signing these days, is people who have been newly exposed to Halloween 3 and are looking at it in a completely different lens. So it's cool.
I think it's gained appreciation because now you are seeing movies that do follow that blueprint of we're basing around a holiday, you know, like and it's, I think Season of the Witch probably paved the way for it. It just was the first, you know, that took it as, well, this is based off a holiday. Like I think of Tales of Halloween as one that is kind of, again,
Yeah.
based off a holiday.
We seem to be picking up where
Yeah.
we left off.
Yes.
Before we went down this Michael Myers path, right? So we.
And the next one in that series
Life
was kind
is
of
a
a slap
crooked
in the
path.
face because it was the return of Michael Myers, which is like, okay, just kick the dog when it's down, I guess.
Well, I think we got the signal here to kind of wrap things up. But yeah, just one. If we can just get from both of you one final thought on just kind of the legacy of these horror films and just the fans that just seems to stand the test of time. There's just newer fans, every younger generation, and just what it's like to be a part of.
Well,
that.
you also have Friday the 13th and
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw, that whole period from the mid-'70s up until the early 80s. And I don't think it'll ever be replicated.
Yeah.
And we sit around sometimes and say, what films being made today will be classics 20 years from now? And that's a whole other discussion.
That's a whole other discussion.
Terrifier 3?
Yeah.
Terrifier 2, I mean.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe, possibly. I think that definitely is one.
But will it stand the test of time?
No, I don't think so. That's just me, though.
Well, I was just going to say that, if I may, that the new Exorcist film, it's very odd because there's no exorcism in it and there's no demon in it, but they still called it The Exorcist. So people go there expecting things that don't exist, and I don't know why.
Nostalgia. And I think but without getting into a big long discussion of it, I think it's called movie studios don't know how to make movies on original
Well, should have had a
ideas.
different name, like Exorcist 3.
But the problem is like they're not gonna, that they're trying to get an audience that's fans of that particular franchise
Brand.
and that brand. It's the marketing, guys. That's all it is. Well, we can make a movie and call it Slap Exorcist on it, and we know we'll get people there. Right. It
First-
might break
first
even.
weekend.
Yeah,
Right.
it might break even. But
Right, we gotta wrap up.
But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure having you both on.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Where
much.
can people find you if they want to get in touch with you? if they, if there's anything.
My house?
No, I mean just like if
Just leave your home
I
address.
mean, I know, Elaine, you
I
mentioned
live
you
in
have
an old monastery.
Well, I know you mentioned you have a book. Nancy, do you have anything that you want the audience to know about to get in touch with you, or?
No, they can find me at these conventions I go to, right?
Right.
That's pretty much how I meet
Well, they can
people.
find me on Facebook.
Okay.
Which is just Eileen Dietz, and I'm on Facebook all the time. That's the best way.
I am not on Facebook, but
You're not on Facebook?
no.
Oh my
Well,
goodness.
My very final question is: if you have a student who's nervous and is reading too quickly, do you say, "Hey, jerk"?
I'm
speed
sorry. Can you
kills?
say?
No, but that's a good idea.
What did you say?
It's a line from Howdy.
But I'm not sure.
Yeah.
My students don't seem to spend a whole lot of time reading these days. But that's another story.
Is that the last of the Halloween? They're not going to shoot anymore?
I have no idea.
Well, there's something about the rights. They may be going to the anthology kind of thing, but we'll have to wait and see on that. But ladies, thank you again for your time.
Thank
I can't
you
thank
so
you enough
much.
for all the
It was a
amazing
pleasure.
stories.
Thank you for having us.
No problem.
Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Psycho Show. You can also find us over at TikTok, Cinema Psycho Show. We are also on Discord. If you want to hang out with us and talk about movies, be sure to click on the link in the description of this episode. And of course, follow us on all the podcast platforms, or you can head over to cinemapsychoshow.com/follow, and we will see you next time.